Well, it's a very tragic situation. Keep in mind that 5 individuals' lives have been changed permanently, and ultimately they're all a victim here.
I'm Duane Urban, and welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast, featuring discussion on firearms, concealed carry, self-defense, the law, and much more. Designed to inform, educate, increase your survival in a critical incident. Welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast. I'm Duane Urban, along with co-host, attorney Andrew Saller, managing partner at Saller, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee. Our returning guests tonight from On-Site Protection, Vinny Noto and Gevenny Gamboa. Thanks for being back tonight.
Thank you for having us back on.
And tonight we're going to be talking about a really sad and unfortunate critical incident involving a handgun permit holder, which took place in Taneytown, Maryland on July the 4th of this year. Andrew, do you kind of want to go through the facts of this case and then we can kind of discuss, or at least the facts as we know them?
Absolutely. Now, I'm getting all this from a statement of probable cause authored by Detective Earhart from the Carroll County Sheriff's Department. So on July 4th, 2024, at approximately 10 p.m., in the first vehicle, we're going to have a Davon Dobbs and his brother, Kwame Kelly. In a second car, we're going to have a Christopher Moore II. They have some sort of road rage incident that starts and sets all of this in motion. Somewhere along the line, Mr. Moore calls his fiancée, a Stephanie Green, who shows up on the scene as well. And she comes across Mr. Dobbs, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Moore, all engaging in a melee in the middle of the street. This all happens in Taneytown. She gets out of her vehicle, witnesses this affray, and she has a handgun with her. In an effort to defuse the situation, she announces this fact, hoping, and this is verbatim from the report, hoping this would de-escalate the situation. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. Mr. Dobbs attacks her and tries to get the gun. During this struggle for the gun, it discharges and shoots him in his left leg. After this, he does successfully seize the firearm, and he then turns it on the others in the melee. I don't know if it's on purpose or inadvertently, ends up shooting his own brother, Mr. Kwame Kelly, in the hand, but tragically also shoots Mr. Moore twice in the chest. Mr. Moore ultimately passes from this injury, and at some point, according to the statement of probable cause, Mr. Dobbs calls 911 and informs them that he has shot the people. He is arrested, charged with first-degree murder and a number of other offenses, and he's currently scheduled for a preliminary hearing in the District Court of Maryland for Carroll County in August of this year.
Wow. So the victim, or the man who was shot and killed, his wife shows up on scene. Fiance, rather, shows up on scene with a handgun. Now, it's on my understanding she had a handgun permit. Do we know that?
She has not been charged with anything. That is also my understanding.
Okay, so it's believed that she has a handgun permit. She shows up on scene, draws her weapon, announces that she's there with this weapon, and then promptly has it taken from her and used against her husband, or her fiance, rather.
Yes. There's obviously a struggle. She is injured. She is assaulted, but yes. And then the individual in the struggle who takes the gun from her is shot in the leg. And then when he turns it on, presumably trying to hit her fiance, shoots his own brother as well.
So, I mean, this is a sad situation.
No, we're dealing with a tragedy here. There are no winners, just a whole bunch of losers. Everyone who's involved in this, their lives are going to be changed forever. And I hate to say it, but it's a tremendous teachable moment at the same time.
You know, I go back to what we talk about in classes, and that is, if you're going to put the gun on, you have to be prepared to use it. And in this situation, she draws the weapon, and again, none of us in this room were there. But she draws the weapon. She hesitates, and I would articulate, and you can disagree with me maybe, she comes upon a scene. Now, again, we don't know whether she was following him, whether she just happened upon it, whether he said, get over here with your gun. We don't know any of that at this moment. But she draws her weapon. She sees that she's in fear of serious bodily injury or death to her fiance at this point.
There's a fight. It appears it's 2 versus 1, possibly.
So they have the advantage of numbers over him. We don't know to what degree he's being assaulted, whether they're simply pushing him or if they're beating him into the ground. But she obviously apparently felt that she was in fear for his safety from serious bodily injury, potentially death, draws her weapon, and then gets it taken from her.
Yes.
And, we see that a lot. We see this type of reaction a lot during some of the classes we do, not the least of which is our Force on Force reality-based training program, where people, they get put into a scenario that they're not familiar with, and they hesitate, and they freeze. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened here, but there was enough time between her drawing the weapon and him being able to get to her to get it from her.
Absolutely. She shows up on the scene in a separate vehicle. So she must have parked in close enough proximity that that is a viable option. And we go to so much in your training, particularly about cover, concealment, things of that nature, but just general situational awareness.
So at the end of the day, if you're going to draw your weapon, you need to be ready to use it. You need to be sure, and you need to be ready to use it. And there was enough time in between her drawing her weapon and inaction for the guy to be able to come and take it from her, apparently assaulting her, I think pistol whipping her. I think somebody said that they read that.
Yeah, I think if I read the statement of probable cause correctly, I think it said that she was struck with the weapon, and she did sustain like a broken jaw and some other head injuries.
And so she's struggling with him, and he somehow a round goes off, whether it's he pulls the trigger or she pulls the trigger.
I guess we really don't know if she shot one round as he was charging her, or if it happened in a struggle on the ground. That's still unclear.
Right, absolutely. So, what are your thoughts if you were in this situation?
Well, there's a lot of questions here, like as far as how did the girlfriend get there? Did the fiance call her? I don't know if that's a fact, but it's kind of rare that they would be traveling in 2 different vehicles. So that's my question: is how did the fiance end up in a separate vehicle, arriving at the scene, and then she gets out and she goes, did she say, I have a gun, or did she draw the weapon and say, stop what you're doing? Because that's still all unclear from what I read. It said that she announced it, correct?
Verbatim. Green advised that she announced having a handgun, hoping this would de-escalate the assault. Instead, Dabbs rushed at her, and a physical assault ensued for possession of the firearm, resulting in Dabbs being shot in the left leg.
So during the struggle, he's shot in the left leg, whether it's as he's approaching, as he's fighting with her, or as he's taking it from her. And then he gains control of the gun and turns around and fires shots in the direction of Mr. Moore and his brother.
Mr. Kelly.
Right, and striking Mr. Kelly in the hand, and unfortunately striking Mr. Moore twice in the chest, and him passing away as a result of that, those rounds. So, I mean, I'll tell you, just to be honest with you, I think she's justified in using deadly force as she's being attacked by this individual. Thoughts?
I agree. Legally, from everything we've read so far, it sounds like if she had used deadly force, this very well may have been justifiable, depending on exactly what she's come across and the situation of the actors. But at the same time, things go horribly awry.
So I think her biggest mistake was trying to use her weapon as, for intimidation, which you should never do. It's not a toy. Like, you don't want to scare people with it. You just want to use it when you really need to.
Day 2 PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yeah.
Don't don't try to bluff the bad guys.
Well, anywhere in the law does it say that you should fire a warning shot or you should brandish the firearm to try and get someone to stop a behavior.
The law, even it's to the opposite, depending on the situation, firing a warning shot would be a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we teach that you should not fire warning shots.
Right.
I mean, it's dangerous. It's a waste of ammunition. If it's time to use deadly force, it's time to use deadly force.
Yeah.
And we don't try to bluff the bad guy.
No.
And if she had fired a warning shot, he definitely would have charged at her. You know what I mean?
Well, that very well may have.
And that's why I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say that technically, if I already have been shot by your gun, I'm in fight or flight mode. I'm in fear for my life. So I'm not thinking clearly.
And no one has provided us with an account of how many rounds were actually discharged. So who knows, what size magazine she even had or what type of firearm it even was.
Or at what point, at what distance the victim and so Mr. Moore and Mr. Kelly, at what distance they were from Miss Green and Mr. Suspect.
Mr. Dabbs.
Mr. Dabbs. So that's, I think that in this situation, well, let's talk about alternative endings here. Okay. So alternative ending number one, she arrives on scene, is in fear of serious bodily injury or death to her fiance, draws her weapon. The suspects are not, one of them attacks her and she uses deadly force on him. I think that given, depending upon the exact circumstances, could have been a justifiable use of deadly force. Or option B, not great, but maybe better than what occurred. If you're not willing to use your firearm, you stay in the car and call 911. I mean, that's not a great option, but maybe better than what happened.
The ending probably would have been very different.
Well, and also, instead of calling your fiance to come help you out, why didn't you call the police and say, I got a madman chasing me?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know to what degree. I mean, maybe they were on the phone together. Maybe they were traveling together. I know it sounds weird, but sometimes people do travel in separate vehicles. Maybe he was in front of her and she's passing. She goes, oh my God, there's my fiance on the side of the road. What's happening? She pulls over to help him, or they're on the phone together while they're driving. And she pulls over when he pulls over. I mean, it's really, we don't know that information.
I mean, I'm no defense attorney, but I'd be really interested to see those phone records.
Yes.
I'm sure somebody's going to see them. Speaking about defense attorneys, Andrew, thank you for wearing a suit tonight and upstaging all of us. Usually that's Andre's job, but coming from the office?
Coming from the office, out there litigating some big misunderstandings today.
As always. Speaking about big misunderstandings, I'd love to know, Producer Jimmy, can you pull up some information on the victim and see if maybe you can find any information on the suspects possibly? And we'll come back when you have that. So, yeah.
I've got a question. Under what circumstances would you ever think it's a good idea to announce I have a firearm?
Well, so I don't think you need to announce it. In fact, under law, you're not required to give any notice or anything like that. Obviously, if it's reasonable to do so and safe to do so, it will look good for you, but it's not a requirement. Let's actually go back in time a little bit further. Let's go back to the start of the road rage incident between the two men in the one car and Mr. Moore, the victim, in the other car. And let's go to the point where they actually pull off to the side of the road and stop. Now, I'm not sure whether they had him pinned in or they blocked him in, but if they didn't, there's no reason to stop and get out of your car.
No, that's mutual combat at that point.
Remember Maryland, for everyone, duty to retreat. Unless you're in your home, duty to retreat.
So, again, stay in the car or avoid the situation. Best way to win a battle is to do what? To avoid it altogether if you can.
Let's go with this angle. A complete, counterfactual situation. But if all parties had been armed in this case, everyone would have been in legal jeopardy. If, we do not have stand your ground here in Maryland. We are not Florida. If he had gotten out and they had gotten out and they all said, oh, let's have a game of show and tell, and we all have firearms, you're in trouble in Maryland, even under that circumstance.
Because
Right.
you should have known better, and you should have taken the higher road and kept moving, or stayed in wherever you felt secure, whether it was inside your vehicle or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I think if you're everybody hops out wielding pistols, you're all a bunch of boneheads.
Well, I mean, look, these road rage incidents abound. We were talking about this before the show, and Vinny, you actually sent me a video last night, and you know, we're seeing so much of this today. People are getting involved, and again, we have everybody that has a cell phone now has a camera, so we have video of it. But in my mind, I've never seen as much as we're seeing now, and we'll put some we'll put some of the video up on screen for those that are actually watching on YouTube. But it's crazy what people are getting into and allowing themselves to get into.
Yeah, it's alarming that how undervalued life is now. Literally, people are just, they will take a life for nothing. I mean, somebody blowing a horn at them, you know, that's enough to send them over the edge. Because, like, I get it, like, we're all in some pretty trying times right now, and, you know, people are stressed, and, you know, people are scared and don't know what the future holds. They can't afford, you know, to live, or whatever the case may be. Everybody has their own individual reasons, but it can literally just take one person to cut you off in traffic or not let you over fast enough, especially in the summertime. You know, with the heat, you know, I still see a lot of people driving with 4 windows down, and it's like, that guy does not have air conditioning. Stay away from him, because he is angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what else we need to address is like the mental health crisis in America right now, not just because of the times we live in currently, but also no one's dealing with their emotions. And like, I watch these videos and I don't understand how someone can get so angry at a complete stranger.
You know, I've always said in classes, we don't have a gun problem in this country. We have a mental health problem.
Absolutely.
That we fail to deal with. And, you know, I don't know if it's this generation, it sounds terrible to say that, but that they just have trouble dealing with their feelings. But you're right. There are people that are getting enraged over simple things.
Well, and I think it's also tied in with the declining, like, physical health of our generation. Like, you know, if you compare us to decades back, like, men's testosterone's like super low,
Yeah,
things like that.
It's all the
Like,
processed
the
foods
hormonal
and stuff.
imbalances are causing like mental health issues for real because of all the processed foods and, you know, everything that all the toxins we take in every day and things that are illegal in other countries that we consume every day.
So you're saying we're all developing PMS?
I believe they call that, what is it? AMS, angry male syndrome.
Well, it's interesting because people say, like, they blame testosterone for aggression.
No, it actually keeps you pretty kosher.
What do they call that? Toxic masculinity.
Toxic
Yeah.
masculinity. But when in reality, the fact is our bodies are meant to have a certain hormonal balance, right? Whether you're male or female, you have to have a certain balance of your hormones. And if you're off, like, it affects your entire body and your mind.
I just wonder, I mean, there certainly could be something to that. I think also in conjunction, there is a lack of personal responsibility in our society today. We have this war against law enforcement. We have situations where people are being told it's not your fault, it's your parents' fault, it's the way you were raised, it's society that has created this, it's not your... So people feel maybe that they can just do whatever.
I get what you're saying, and I think what we're trying to drive home is, like, there are people out there that would rather do life in prison than get punched in the face,
Or would rather go to jail than get quote unquote punked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Because
you're
it's
100%
about
right.
it's about respect, I
About
guess.
respect, and they don't want to fight.
And what do we have more now out on the road than we did prior to June of 2022? What do you think? What is out there more now than there was before?
Virginia license plates. No.
Well, that too.
Yeah. Electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Handgun permit holders, because we had the We had the case, the Supreme Court ruling, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I am pro Second Amendment. I'm also pro personal responsibility. And remember, when you have that permit and you have that gun, every fight you're involved in is a gunfight. Why? Because you brought the gun. And in this case, that's the perfect example. Now, I don't know if these guys had firearms or not in their vehicle or on their persons. That information is not known. But what we do know is that she did have a gun and had it taken from her and used against her. And that's one of the ending bits of the class when we teach the class is if at any point in your life you get to a situation where you go for mental reasons or religious reasons or whatever, that you couldn't drop the hammer on another human being, it's time to put it away and leave it at home because it'll make the situation worse.
Yeah. Well, as we talked about in the last episode, is raising the situation to deadly force or escalating it to that. And essentially that's what she did when she showed up there waving this gun around saying, hey, I have a gun, get off my fiance. She then turned it into a deadly force situation.
I think there's a lot of people out there that don't actually know whether it was gone over in whatever class they went to or not, that don't actually know when they can use deadly force. We were talking about it. I was doing some work today, and I was talking to some of my teammates, and we were talking about how there's many people out there that don't know where they can actually carry their gun and be in compliance with the law. If they don't know that, I'm quite sure that they haven't decided or figured out when you can use deadly force. And the thing is even if you know, if you've never practiced, if you've never trained yourself, if you haven't trained yourself to operate under those conditions, under stress, and pre-planned some ideas of what you might do in those situations, you're likely going to hesitate. It's a fact, and that hesitation may be enough for you to be disarmed. All right, Jimmy, what do you got for us?
Run his name with no middle name.
So, Jimmy, what you're seeing there is on the Davon Dabbs suspect. You said 20 years old? So he's 20 years old.
21.
21. And on the screen there, it looks like he just has, from what I'm seeing, now we can't see his juvenile record, but what I'm seeing on the screen there is looks like a traffic and then this case. Yep. So, okay. What about the victim?
Well, are you going to run Kwame Kelly?
You got it.
Why don't we see it?
Why are you gotta put it on the screen? We can't see your phone.
That's the purpose of the screen.
Yeah, we have all this fucking great technology.
Come on, guy. Oh, well, that could have caused the road rage incident.
Kwame.
And again,
Maybe. So he's always been a crap driver.
Well, and we don't know whether we don't know who created the road rage incident. We don't know who was the aggressor as far as the driving incident.
Got some criminal there.
Yeah, what's that down there?
All right, so we've got something on the screen
Failure
here.
to pay rent, doesn't pay his rent.
No,
speeds.
But look at 67244. What's that case?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
that's him.
to the left and up, sir. 67224. Down.
It's the ones that say criminal.
What's that?
Yeah, click those.
You didn't click. Oh, you did. Click.
Okay.
Scroll down. What
does it say?
Keep going.
Erin Dans, she's a judge now.
All right, there we go. Right there. Stop. Malicious destruction of property.
PBJ.
Not guilty. PBJ. Is that the only one?
So that was in 2016.
There's another one right above it. It might be for the same one though.
Yeah, that was the same one. No middle name.
Yeah.
So that was it. Just some traffic. So he's got some traffic, and he's got the one malicious destruction of property there. What about the victim? Let's find out what kind of citizen this individual is. All right, so Mr. Moore.
Well, run him through a case search real quick.
Yeah,
just in case.
Let's see what he's got on case search.
There we go. Christopher Patrick II.
There you go.
All right, so let's see what it is. What do you got?
Yeah.
Snow Hill.
Defendant. What is it?
Means he got locked up in Ocean City.
Oh.
What is it?
I don't know.
Casting rays without implementation.
So
what does that mean?
What is that?
What is that?
I have no fucking clue.
Does that mean like you're sun tanning without a permit?
So it's a natural resources charge or it's natural resources police. Cast rays with
Like a sea ray? Was he fishing for sea
with
rays?
implementation.
I don't know what that is. So, all right.
Can we Google it?
So, producer Jimmy, why don't you see if you can search that while we talk about anything else about Mr. Moore?
Is that like an environmental thing?
Oh, spotlighting for deer.
There it is. Okay.
I didn't
Click
know
on
that
that.
was a
Click on
charge.
that. Let's see what the penalty is. The maximum penalty. Just bring that up. Scroll. Oh, you can't hunt with an automatic firearm either.
Well, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Keep on scrolling. $2,000 fine or 6 months.
6 months for shining a flashlight at a deer.
Yeah.
So Jim, I know there was some information that you're able to pull up regards to him. So it looks like Mr. Moore, after graduating from high school, enlisted in the Maryland Army National Guard. He was a sergeant, remaining an NCO in the Guard until his death. So he was currently in the Guard. He was deployed to Egypt in 2011. He was assigned to Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 175th Infantry, 5th Maryland. Lots of awards. He was awarded, let's see here, go up a little bit. So Armed Forces Service Medal ×2, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal ×1, Multinational Force and Observers Medal ×1, Army Reserve.
Don't say ×1 after everyone.
Well, there's a couple. He got doubles.
Say the ones that.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So Overseas Service Ribbon, Army Superior Unit Award, Army Forces Reserve Medal with device, Army Good Conduct, Army Achievement Medal ×2, and some state awards, Maryland Commendation Medal ×2, Maryland State Service Ribbon, Maryland Emergency Services Ribbon ×3, DC Emergency Service Ribbon, Maryland Outstanding Unit Ribbon ×3, and by all accounts, it looks like he enjoyed hunting and fishing, bowling, playing softball in his free time, and he was also a volunteer firefighter and chaplain for the Harney VFW.
and he leaves behind a daughter, and that's the saddest part of all this.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, an entirely avoidable situation, I would think.
Yeah, cooler heads need to prevail.
There is apparently a trust being put together for his daughter, and there's a GoFundMe. So we will put a link to that in the description box for anyone that's interested in checking that out.
Horrible, 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 horrible tragedy.
Yeah. And again, sometimes discretion is the better part of valor, and you got to keep your emotions, your anger, and your testosterone under control. And not to say that that's what happened here. I mean, I don't know, but certainly more advisable to try to avoid these situations than to insert yourself into one or to exacerbate one.
Yeah, especially when the party that you're arguing with is a younger person. You're probably,
Well, and you're outnumbered.
you're outnumbered. You're arguing with essentially a kid compared to you. You need to just be like, keep driving.
Well, and that's assuming we're assuming that the other vehicle started the altercation. The facts are we don't know at this point.
we don't know who started it, or
Right.
What we do know is both parties ended up outside of their vehicles. That's mistake number one. Mistake number two is
Stopping is mistake number one.
Stopping is mistake number
two
one.
is getting out.
Getting out of your car is mistake number two, and then mistake number three is presenting a firearm by probably what I would call an inexperienced handler and inexperienced person. And that's the problem with everybody getting permits now, is that you're still going to have a lot of cowboys out there and a lot of inexperienced people. And I just want to drive home that a permit to carry a handgun is not a license to kill. It's not a license to walk around and enforce the law. Like, it's just, it's for personal protection. It's protecting yourself, your family. Can you help a perfect stranger out with it? And if all the boxes are checked, whatever, then yeah, you can step in, you can get involved. There's no duty to do that, but you could.
But if you're stepping in, make sure you do not get disarmed, because that's how these tragedies unfold.
Don't pull your gun out and hope that that's going to be enough to stop whatever's going on, because as we saw in this case, it didn't work out that way.
Honestly, that's always been a fear of mine is what if I'm carrying, someone takes my gun from me, uses it against me?
Right. Yeah.
It's definitely a fear.
Having a firearm and a carry permit and carrying it on you is a huge responsibility. And that's why when we end the first day, we show videos in the class, same videos that you would have seen. And these are videos of actual deadly force situations, and they were chosen for different reasons to drive different points home. But we show them at the very end of the first day to drive the point home that this is serious business. And in a lot of cases, we have, I think, people that get into the notion of being able to carry a gun and think that this is a really cool thing. And look at me, I'm going to be able to carry the gun, and wow, this is going to be fun and awesome. And it has with it a lot of responsibility. And we've had people, after we show the videos and have the final discussions, and we ended on that somber note and send everyone home. I've had people come in the next day and say, you know what, this isn't for me. I thought about it, but I'm pulling out. And my hat off to those individuals who were strong enough to know that this was beyond their limitations.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me that, like, other women say that they'll never carry a handgun just because they don't want that responsibility.
And I don't want to sit here and scare people, and it's not my purpose to sit here and try and dissuade people from getting permits, but the preparation aspect of it is so critical that you should be always preparing yourself for the eventuality that something like this could occur, and be ready if it does. And I think a lot of people, they don't.
Yeah, well, that's the most common thing that I hear is, and I've said this before, is like, people are like, well, I'm not sure that, I could shoot someone. And I'm like, well, if I lay a 300-pound man on top of you right now and he's doing unspeakable things to you, you could shoot him 100%.
I mean, there are people that are, I guess, conscientious objectors and things like that in the military and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's a personal decision. If you're afraid to take a life, if you morally or ethically feel that you can't, well, then I guess this isn't the right thing for you to have with you.
It's an awesome responsibility that should not be taken lightly.
No.
We keep going back to this preparation bit, and that is really the reason why we do what we're doing right now. And Andrew and I talked about it when we did the brief description of what this podcast is, and why it exists. And it exists for just this reason. We understand that people are busy. We understand that people don't have time to always go to multiple training classes and things like that, although they should try to avail themselves to it as much as possible. That this is a way for people to listen and learn and better prepare themselves for the eventuality of a critical incident.
So the responsible thing to do would be to do your own research on, like, what the law says I can do, how to escalate or de-escalate a situation, like what is the proper action, what are the proper action steps to take. But the thing is, most of us don't do that sort of thing. It's like when I was a personal trainer, if I met with a client twice a week, those were the only times they worked out. They didn't do any homework on their own, even though I told them, like, you need to do this, that, whatever. They didn't.
We, as responsible citizens and gun owners, should take it upon ourselves to do exactly what you're saying.
As she was saying, like, obviously everybody takes their 16-hour class. They go and they punch 25 holes in a piece of paper at the range. Instructor says, good job, signs off on your certificate. You're off on your merry way. You go home, you fill out your paperwork, you submit your $75. Well, it's $150 now. And
I think it's 125.
Yeah.
They wanted to make it 150. They got it down to 125.
So, and then next thing you know, you get your permit in the mail. But that's about the extent of people's training and education. It stops right there. And they're like, okay, well, I have it. I did all I needed to do, and I'm ready to take on the world. But it's just like, I've been riding motorcycles for 25 years now. And, I took my class, when I was 17. You ride around the parking lot. They set a couple cones up and you weave around them, and they say, okay, you're ready to go ride that motorcycle down the highway. And I'm like, okay, great. This is great. I did my part. So I rode for the better part of 10 years, and of course I had some accidents here and there, but I thought that I knew how to ride a motorcycle. And then I was introduced to the racetrack, and that's where I figured out that I didn't know jack. And
But you took it upon yourself to
I
do
did.
that.
And I worked with riding instructors that were like real riders, not people that were wearing MVA badges around their neck. And they were like, they teach you how to properly ride the motorcycle. Now, the skills that you learn there, you can use them for good or evil, just like anything else. But they make you a better rider on the street. And that's the same thing I try and tell people with handguns. Like, yes, you can go to the range and shoot paper every weekend. Okay, it's calm, it's controlled. There's no one shooting back. The paper's not moving. But I would definitely recommend for people that are taking it seriously to educate yourself highly on the law and study the law yourself, because it's always changing. But also, I would take some advanced shooter classes. I would do your use of force 101, do some simulation stuff to where you're put in like a real life scenario, even though it's still technically a scenario, but it still gets the adrenaline going. It raises the heart rate, puts the pressure on you.
And I think the one good thing that came out of this unfortunate situation and others that we've seen on social media is that it's bringing awareness to the topic. People are seeing the mistakes that others are making, and they're thinking, I'm not going to do that.
I challenge people to take some sort of reality-based training class, and there are places out there that offer different things. I think ours is top of the line. It's very simple. Take it one time. Take it one time and see what your reaction is. And if past performance tells us anything from running these classes now for the better part of a year, those particular classes, because we had to develop it, it tells us that by and large, people tend to have the same initial reaction in the first scenario and sometimes the second scenario, and it is that inordinate hesitation that they have. Jimmy prefers the first scenario because he gets shot the least in that, because he's one of our role players. But it was eye-opening. We talked about it in another podcast that when we ran the first one of these for civilians, me and the other instructors talked about it right after the first scenario, after everyone pretty much got killed in a very simple scenario. And we said, did we make this wrong? Did we make this too difficult? It wasn't the case. It took that experience, because it feels real. It feels real. There is a real person that is going to attack you. It's not paper. It's not some sort of computer simulation. It's a real person, and he's close, and he will attack you if you don't take action, and it feels real. And they say afterwards, my God, I didn't know it was going to feel like this. I didn't know it was going to be like this. I can't believe I couldn't get the gun out of my holster. I can't believe I just stood there and stared at him. Sometimes they'll turn around and look at us and go, am I supposed to shoot him? No, let him kill you. I mean, what? Yes, that's the point. That's the point.
And that's just like it's those people that they're lackadaisic about most things in life. And like I try and preach to everybody, no matter what age you are, like, try and stay somewhat functionally and physically fit, because you have the guy that played, high school football and he hasn't ran since high school. And then next thing you know, he gets put into a real life situation where he has to run, move, get out of the way. And that's the wrong time to find out that you can't do that anymore.
So, I mean, if I had to guess, and again, none of us were there, but if I had to guess, she drew the weapon, and the individual was not, because if I'm correct, it said in the statement of probable cause, she drew her weapon and announced in the hope it would de-escalate.
Correct.
Yeah.
So did she actually draw the weapon? Because when I read it, it just said she announced she had a weapon.
It's very unclear. I mean, honestly, the way that whole statement of probable cause is written, it's kind of very vague.
Yeah, it is unclear. Just once again, verbatim, Green advised that she announced having a handgun, hoping this would de-escalate the assault.
Yeah.
And we know hope is not a plan.
No.
No, you can Well, there's a saying for that, but I won't say it because that'll just make Duane have to do more editing, more duck quacks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Duane, do you teach this in any of your classes? Announce you have a handgun?
Yeah.
No, we do not talk about that. The gun stays put, concealed until it's time for it to be used. When it is time for it to be used, it's time for you to go ahead and get it out and use it.
G Money, as a woman, would you ever think that's an appropriate course of action?
What part?
Announcing you have a firearm.
No, absolutely not. Because like I said, my fear is they'll take it from me.
Yeah, it's like walking into Walmart and going, I have a gun. I'm going to grocery shop in peace.
In fact, when I'm carrying, I'm so paranoid that you can see it. Like, I'm so paranoid, especially with women's clothing. Like, I have to wear something like extra baggy or something because I don't want someone to see that.
And that was going to be the topic, actually, when we got together tonight. We were going to talk about concealed carry holsters and the theory behind it and how you should carry and what types of things you should have with you. But we actually are putting that off to the next one because this incident happened and it bears discussion. And you're right. It does bring up, in its tragedy, it does bring up, and again, our condolences go out to the family and those that were injured, but it brings up the point that this is serious business. And if you're going to embark upon this, you better prepare yourself.
Yeah, it's more than just make you feel good. Hey, I got a permit to carry a handgun, blah, blah, blah. It's like you do realize that a need may arise at some point in your life to where you are actually going to have to use that weapon. And
I'd love to know, and there's so many, there's probably, 1,500, 2,000 quote unquote instructors on that state police list. I don't know what the actual number is. Maybe producer Jimmy can find that out for us.
I got a lot of people that apply for my company and they're like, by the way, I'm a handgun instructor. And I'm like, okay.
Right. And I wonder what number of these classes they actually go into this topic where they talk about the seriousness of it and the do's and the don'ts, or are most of these classes just, this is how you load it, this is how you stand, this is how you clean it, and just very basic fundamentals without going into the tactics, without going into ways of keeping yourself safe in one of those situations.
That's my concern if we push this off to Annapolis, that the critical lessons that need to be taught are pushed aside, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this is the difference between a pistol and a revolver and things like that are important. But I think it's much more important that if you're in an incident where, God forbid, you have to use it, you know what to do.
Well, and they did that. They under, what was it, House Bill 824 or whatever, where they came out with some specific lesson plan topics that then had to be in these classes. Very few of which, they go through the pattern jury instructions and things like that, but really none of it goes over this type of discussion. And there was a lot of stuff that was in there as filler, like suicide awareness, not suicide, not that you're dealing with a suicidal subject, but what if you're feeling suicidal? Anger management, not recognizing the signs of anger in others and determining, oh, it's time for me to disengage, but no, recognizing signs of anger in you. So there was a lot of stuff that I think was well-intentioned and poorly executed.
Absolutely. And involving the government in problems rarely makes it better. That's my libertarian view.
Yeah, I'm from the government. I'm here to help, right?
It's scariest words in the English language.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, but it wouldn't hurt to have some public service announcements to at least take away some of the taboo, you know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. That's what we're doing right now.
Instead of not talking about guns, let's talk about guns and how you're supposed to use them.
And these are important topics that should be discussed. Firearms are used in suicide, and something should be done about that. But I don't think taking away all firearms is the solution, and I don't think changing the curriculum to account for that at the expense of critical incident training is a wise use of time.
So producer Jimmy has up on the screen right now the list of qualified instructors. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. There are more than 40 pages of people with what looks to be something like 25 or 30 quote-unquote instructors on each. Oh my God, 79 pages.
I don't see you on there, Duane.
Oh, I'm on there.
Suspect.
I'm on there. You got to get to the U's. But I'm definitely, but my God, 79 pages with, it looks like maybe 25 or 30 names or more
Good Lord.
on each page.
They just hand these things out like candy, huh?
I guess. I mean, it's.
You get a certificate. You get a certificate.
I mean, unfortunately so. And
I'm getting mine. This is it.
What people don't realize is the bar, and I talk about this in classes, and I sound like a hater, and I probably will now, but sorry, not sorry.
There you are.
So there is a very low bar for someone to become, quote unquote, a qualified handgun instructor. Most of these people went through a 1 or a 2 day NRA instructor school where they learned this is how you load it, this is how you stand, this is how you shoot it, this is how you clean it. And they don't go over those important, critical topics that are not only designed to help keep you and someone else alive potentially, but to keep you out of jail, to keep you from being sued and losing everything you've worked your entire life for.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of certification programs, like including like the personal training certification program. Anyone can get that. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of a money grab. Like,
there's a lot of well-intentioned people on here that like guns, they're hobbyists, and they believe they're giving something to the Second Amendment by helping people, as many people as possible, get these permits. And maybe they don't realize that they're sending them out like a half-baked cake. They're not fully ready. And then there's the other half that I like to call the opportunists. And these are the people that see dollar signs. And like I said before, these are people that don't have a good background, right? What we got there? You see a name?
I see a name on the screen.
You see a name on the screen.
I won't say it publicly.
Hold on, I'm looking to see if I can see it. Okay. Now,
we just learned that Duane's middle name is Thomas.
Yeah.
My middle name is Thomas. And so these folks, they maybe have minimal background or very little background. They are good at marketing, and they look good, and they sound good, but they're taking your money. And most people don't, when they come to these classes, they maybe don't know enough to know that they're not actually getting what they're paying for. And I know this sounds like an infomercial, and I'm not trying to make it that way, but personal responsibility is important, especially in a situation where it's a big deal if you get it wrong.
This gentleman, Mr. Dabbs, is facing life in prison for the decisions he made on July 4th. And once again, it's a horrible situation. One man lost his life. His own brother got shot. I don't know what she wouldn't be a widow, but she's lost her fiance. She was brutally assaulted. It's just horrible all around.
It's going to be a very interesting case to follow. I'm interested to see how it plays out.
We'll be doing more updates as the case progresses, and if we can, we'll do one at the conclusion and see what comes out in trial.
It was possibly all the worst things that could have went wrong that day literally went wrong. Really bad scenario.
I kind of have mixed feelings about it, though, because I kind of want to hear your perspective. But at the point at which he takes the gun from, I forget what her name is, the fiance.
Miss Green.
At the point at which he takes the gun from Miss Green, is it no longer self-defense? Because now he has the weapon. And she's laying there, broken jaw. The other guy's unarmed. He's got his brother.
So if he's so here's the thing. He's the aggressor. He's attacking her fiance. She comes on scene to defend him, draws the weapon, is disarmed. Now the suspect, the person that she's in fear of, now has the weapon.
He's been shot, but
she has complete. I mean, in my mind, their deadly force is still obviously warranted here. If she grabbed a pencil and jammed it into him or something like that, that's still deadly force.
The Liddy pencil technique.
Is that what it's called?
Allegedly, G. Gordon Liddy had a pencil technique where you could kill someone with a pencil. That was one of his claims to fame.
I do believe they did that in the Batman movie
as well.
Yes. Stood it up on the table.
So what if the victim had started running away at that point?
You mean Mr. Moore?
Yeah, when you say victim.
The deceased, I don't know what else to call him. I don't know his name.
At one point, he was a defendant, and one point, he was a victim.
Well, look, if the threat that you were defending against doesn't exist anymore because either the bad guy runs away or the person you're trying to defend now is able to escape and is no longer in immediate and imminent danger, then I think you withdraw. But again, based upon what we've read and what we're assuming based on what we've heard, there was very little time in between her arriving, announcing, and then being attacked, and then those shots being fired. But with that said, when the court case comes out and we're going to know more.
There are going to be 12 Monday morning quarterbacks on that jury, and they are going to hear, hopefully, some very good attorneys go through this, and it's going to be very interesting to see what facts actually come out at trial that the jury chooses to believe or disbelieve.
Andrew, what type of timeline does something like this look like? What can we expect from the courts in this case?
So he's currently being held without bond. His preliminary hearing is scheduled for August. So his case at that point will be transferred to the circuit court, and under Maryland Hicks rule, he needs to be tried within 180 days of his first appearance in the circuit court, absent a showing of good cause. So he's probably going to be about 6 or 7 months away from trial from today.
And how much does that trial cost?
If you called me up, $50,000 to $100,000.
So not a cheap endeavor.
Justice isn't cheap.
So I would imagine then once everything is resolved, we'll probably do an update on this either as its own video or as an attachment to another video just to update everybody on what the actual results of the case were.
Absolutely. And not to get too technical, he's currently charged with first-degree murder, so that's going to have to show some premeditation on his part. If I'm a defense attorney, that is going to be the first part I attack.
I was going to say, I was reading the statement of probable cause. I saw first and second degree assault in there, and I saw the first degree murder, but I didn't see a second or a manslaughter in there.
Those would all be right now what are called lesser included still, so they can, even if they are not explicitly charged, you are implicitly charged with them. And when the case gets indicted and transferred to the circuit court, I would almost be willing to bet the charges against him are changed. And he's also charged with assaulting her as well in the first and second degree, too. So it's going to be very interesting. Not for shooting his brother, though.
Yeah,
well, he's got that going for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bold strategy, Cotton.
So for the wrap up, Andrew, thoughts for the folks out there if they were to be faced with a similar situation?
Discretion, as we've hinted at, is always the better part of valor. You've had 4 people here whose lives are going to be changed forever, really 5 when you factor in the deceased's daughter. And this is just a horrible situation that really, once again, carrying a firearm is a tremendous right and a tremendous responsibility. And when you're confronted with these situations, in a split second, both do what's morally right and legally justified. And remember, in Maryland, a duty to retreat.
Okay, that's a great point, Andrew. As we wrap up, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want you to remember, if you like this and similar content, please comment, share, like, and most importantly, subscribe. It only takes a second. It really helps us out. Stay tuned for our next episode by hitting that notification bell. If you're interested in our firearms training program, the information will be in the description box. Again, our thoughts, prayers go out to the family. So for the Urban Defense Podcast, I'm Duane Urban, along with Andrew Saller and our guests, Vinny Noto and Gevenny Gamboa. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, knowledge is mental ammunition, and train, fight, and win.